My New Year's resolution for 2012 was to get in shape again. After my first kid was born, I had lost my athletic interest, but I had every intention of getting it back. So I started running 4 days a week with my friend Hannah, who is a great runner and a motivator. We would run after work, 5 to 10 kilometers, usually favoring the forest trail. It's the kind of trail that gets lighting in the darker months of the year, so you can run there anytime really. Once you turn on the lights, you have 45 minutes to run the shorter trails, and longer to run the longer ones. Then, the lights shut off automatically. We had been running for about 2 months when we started seeing the same man hanging around the parking lot every time we got there. Thin man, 25 to 30 years of age, always dressed in sports clothes, but never actually running. He never looked you in the eye either. We speculated that he could be homeless camping nearby because he was constantly there. We got used to seeing him sitting somewhere close by, silently and always on his own. We felt sorry for him. He never seemed to talk to anybody or interact at all. But there was something about him that made us hesitate to talk to him or ask if he was okay. Can't pinpoint what it was, but something wasn't completely right with him. One evening, Hannah didn't make it to our run, and I decided to go on my own. I arrived at the parking lot, my car being the only car there. I did some stretching, turned on the lights, and set off on the 5-kilometer trail. I hadn't seen the thin, silent man when I started my run. Perhaps it was getting too cold to sit there now that it was autumn, dark, and getting closer to the freezing point. He must have been there though, somewhere in the shadows, because when I got to the top of the first steep hill, I could hear heavy breathing somewhere behind me. I look over my shoulder, and I see him. He is running like a man obsessed, in regular shoes, not running shoes, with his arms moving in a really strange, stiff manner, as if he was made of metal, his hands like arrows, straight and in an upward, inward angle, sort of like a sprint, but more extreme and moving like a robot. For the first time, he looked me straight in the eyes, and it was the eyes of a predatory animal, and it made my heart freeze. He had never done anything to harm me, or anybody else, as far as I knew, but the look in his eyes alone was enough to let me know that I was facing a serious threat. I started running faster, trying to create distance between us, and I could hear his heavy breathing getting even more strained. I ran like my life depended on it, adrenaline pumping through my body and giving me new strength. I tore off my necklace and threw it on the ground thinking, I must leave a trace if he takes me. Something must be left behind. I tried screaming, hoping someone would be close enough to hear me, but I couldn't scream my lungs out and keep up the pace at the same time. Why is he doing this? What does he want? Who is he? I thought as I started to feel my lungs burn. Then I thought of my 15-month-old daughter and ran until I tasted blood in my mouth. He was still behind me, maybe 100 meters behind now, but I figured that if I trip and fall, or run out of energy, or fumble with the car keys once I reach the parking lot, then I'm screwed. So once I reached the sharp turn on the trail, I went off the trail and ran straight into the woods. I ran only a short distance and then laid down flat on my stomach, my hands searching for a rock to defend myself with if he found me. I realized that I was wearing bright running clothes with reflexes and neon coloring. I had never felt so visible in the dark before. I could hear him reach the turn, and thank God he kept on running. I started to slowly and as silently as possible move further into the darkness. My heart sank again, and as soon as I heard rapid footsteps closing in the front of the trail, he had realized that I must have gotten off the trail once he saw that there was no sign of me ahead. He stopped, and I stopped. I could imagine him listening for any sound, and I held my breath and was begging God to make him go away. After a while, I heard him say something in a language I didn't recognize and walk off. I didn't move. I feared that he could wait for me by my car and realized that I had to get off the trail and onto the main road and stop somebody. I couldn't go back to the parking lot. I started to make my way further into the woods, knowing that I would eventually end up on the last part of the long trail and close to the main road. The lights on the trail suddenly shut off. That made me calmer at first. The dark was a comfort and protection, but then, after only a few moments, it switched on again. This could mean that another person had started their run, and soon I would have somebody there to help me, or that he was looking out for me, or getting ready to prey to another lonely runner. I decided against waiting to find out and continued my way towards the main road. It was dark, and I felt multiple times my clothes getting wet from the damp vegetation, and I started to get cold. After what felt like a lifetime, I could see the 10-kilometer trail ahead and knew I was close to the main road. Soon, I could hear the traffic. Once I made it to the road, I must have looked like I had been in a terrible accident. Blood from several small cuts from the falling, my clothes dirty in my face, I assumed petrified. My bright runner's shirt soon attracted the attention of a passing car. My waving and desperate shouting made it stop. The driver, a 40-ish-old man with two of his kids in the back seat, spent the next 10 minutes or so trying to make sense of what I was trying to tell him between the sobbing and the crying. He asked if I wanted to lift back to the parking lot and retrieve the car, and I said no, and to please take me back home. At home, my husband insisted on going to the parking lot to retrieve the car and calling the police. And report what, I asked. No crime had been committed. I just knew that he was out to get me. My husband went back to the car. The driver's seat window was smashed and my phone was gone. So was the photo of my daughter that I had hanging from the mirror. I don't know what he was trying to do or why he chased me the way he did, but the look in his eyes, there was no doubt he had bad intention. This happened about 5 years ago, back when I was going through hard times and was homeless. I used to live in Denver, Colorado, which is where this took place. There are several cemeteries in the Denver area, but there's one on the outskirts of Denver that's very large and very old. I think it may be the oldest one that's still being actively used. Before I became homeless, I didn't know much about this area. I had always gotten a creepy feeling around there, but didn't know why until I was on the streets. After that, I heard from many different people that it has lots of underground tunnels and some homeless people living in those tunnels. But in the deeper tunnels, there's cult activity. These tunnels have secret entrances all over the area, and the homeless that live around these areas avoid some of these spider holes because people have been known to disappear near them, mostly women. This area has a river going through it. Alongside the graveyard, one side of the river has a darker feel than the other. It's eerie over there and smells like death. Anyways, one time I was wandering the area with a few friends. We had nowhere to go and decided to hang out in the abandoned part of the graveyard, the older side. It had just gotten dark and it was windy. It was also fall, so it was cold. We were huddled up against the gravestones to block the wind. One of the people I was with knew the area better than me, and he had warned me to be very vigilant. I figured this is so we wouldn't attract any type of security, police, or other homeless people. But later, I found out why he was so anxious about this area. It was probably around 10 p.m. We had sort of all been just sitting in silence, trying to stay warm, hoping the night passed quickly. And then I heard my friend whisper, let's call him Jay. Hey, heads up, keep quiet. I had already been quiet, but I immediately tensed up, assuming he spotted security or something. But as I looked around, I saw in the distance some small flickering lights appearing here and there all around the graveyard, almost as if people had been spread all around the large graveyard and they were all holding lighters that flicked on, which only then showed they were all over. After my eyes adjusted a bit, I recognized they seemed to be candles. I looked harder and could sort of see the outlines of people holding these candles. Jay whispered, "Yo, we gotta go." We clumsily started grabbing the few items we had around us. Jay came right behind me and said, "Follow me and don't look at them." I was thinking, what the hell? Me and my other friend quickly started following Jay, moving at a quick walk straight to the break in the fence where we had come in. I was stupid enough to look behind me and saw the lights and figures continuing to appear all around us. They were walking to the middle of the graveyard to stand in a circle. I passed by a few and saw out the corner of my eye they were wearing black coats. I could feel the menacing presence and stares, like they were daring me to look at them, but I had an overwhelming feeling that if we left them alone, that they would leave us alone. One thing that haunted me afterwards was that the way that they seemed to move towards the middle. They moved quickly and smoothly, as if they were like gliding and just seemed to morph out of darkness. My instincts were on high alert. I knew whoever they were pure evil. We got the hell out of there, and once we got to the fence, we full on sprinted for a few blocks. Jay didn't explain much. He just said to avoid those people and don't look at them in the eye, or they could have the power over you. I definitely had gotten that feeling from the encounter. I asked why they weren't scared of cops or security, and he basically said that they got away with stuff they did because the authorities didn't want to risk looking into it because they didn't want to be targeted. I don't know how true this is, but I don't know what I saw and felt.